Hi there, this is Russ Lagan, and tonight we're going to be talking about some really cool stuff. I've seen a couple of real estate posts and mortgage posts over the last week or so, and today we're literally going to talk about exactly what I saw on the video post or on the Facebook post, and exactly how it should be phrased or phrasing it differently so that it makes sense. And what I saw on the Facebook post was this. And Tam and Adriana, you guys may have seen this a couple times when you're out and about in Facebook cruising around or hearing mortgage people talking or other real estate people talking. I was actually listening to NPR earlier today, and they were actually saying the same thing. And the problem is they didn't tell anybody what it really meant either. So the comment is something along the lines like this. Mortgage rates dropped over the last week. First rate drop or largest rate drop over the last decade. And what the heck does that mean? It's like, I mean, obviously the average person would know lower interest rate means lower cost. That's great. The average person would know, yeah, it probably saves me a little bit of money, but nobody's telling the rest of the story and what that really means. And when you start stacking these little tiny jumps and dips, when you start stacking these up, it really adds up to a big number. So what happens is when we're real estate agents, we don't actually speak the language of like the normal consumers, because our education level goes up, and as our education level goes up, the words we use and the verbiage we use and the acronyms we use goes up. And what happens is we end up losing your average consumer. So when I'm talking to ladies across the street, I've got to completely change my verbiage to like, they don't know what I know. So since they don't know what I know, I've got to keep things nice and simple and make sense for them. So when they were talking about this, I had posted something on Facebook, and she's like, what was that whole thing all about? What is that a big deal? Because like everybody was posting about that. And I said, well, let me explain it to you real quick. And I literally did this with them. And the lady across the street was like, oh my God, I didn't realize that. I didn't know that's what that meant. I mean, I kind of knew that it meant it was a better deal and it saved me some money, but I didn't realize that. And I was like, and that's what I'm teaching real estate agents. So instead of saying interest rates dropped, the simple scenario here is I'm going to show you what to do with that. We're going to say interest rates dropped, and what does that mean? And there's a lot of things in the real estate business that you can apply this to. So don't just think, well, okay, Russ, when I talk about interest rates or talk about prices, I just use that verbiage then. What I want you to think is when it's interest rates or house prices or anything else real estate, market supply, things like that, what I want you to consistently say is, here's what happened, and let me tell you what that means to you. So when you go to that next level, you're able to make a connection with somebody and be able to draw them in and be able to connect it to something that's important to them, right? So for me, I'm talking to them, blah, 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 interest rates, and you can save some money. Well, I can save you money. Like, well, who cares, really? But when I say to you, I can save you $100 a month, and you're like, well, okay, well, $100 a month is pretty good. Yeah, but I'm going to do that every month for the next 360 months. What's 100 times 360? That's $36,000, right? So where most people would say, well, it's $100 a month, I'd say it's $100 a month, and you're going to be doing that for 30 years, which means 360 payments, which means 100 times 360, or $36,000 is what that is. Wow, right? I mean, now you've got a completely different, like, bing, 36 grand. Wow, that's a big number, right? $100 a month is a, it's a lot of money. I don't want somebody taking $100 a month for me. If you said, hey, Russ, your car payment's now $100 more, you get to drive the same car, I'd be like, well, crap, that sucks, right? Hey, by the way, your cell phone bill just went up $100. You get nothing more for it, right? Well, that sucks. So what you got to keep in mind, I'm going to have a cell phone for the next 30 or 40 years probably, right? So what does that really cost me over the life of that cell phone? It's a massive butt ton of money when you start adding it up. So what we've got to do is we've got to tell the story of not just what happened, but what happened and what does that mean to you? And then what does that mean over the long term? Because that's when it starts to really settle in and starts to really stick in their head. And then the last component of this is not just, hey, the interest rates dropped. The interest rates dropped, and it would save you X amount of dollars per month and X amount of dollars over the 360 months that you're going to be paying for this house. But then the next part is a question. So let me ask you, is that a lot of money? Is that a big deal? What would you do if you had an extra $36,000? Now you're making them connect to something that's important to them, right? So you've got a kid in college right now. How much does that college education cost this year for the kid? They're like, wow, 17,000 bucks, right? Adriana, your kids are too young for college, right?
No, I have one in college.
You have one in college? How much does your one in college cost you this year?
Oh, so far like 10 grand because we have Florida prepaid college. So but still.
Okay, but that's cheap, but still, yeah. I mean, so when you're looking at $36,000, that's how many years? Doing exactly what you're already doing. So when you start making connections with people on those types of things, it completely shifts the way they think, right? So what I'm talking about here is, a lot of real estate agents are talking this information, and then they've got people that are thinking about buying or selling. And when they start making this type of connection, that buyer all of a sudden becomes way more motivated. Now, some of you might, some people say, well, Russ, but that's, you're manipulating the buyer. No, I'm showing the buyer what the facts are. That the buyer says, hey, wow, that's a big deal. Maybe I should be seriously thinking about doing this now instead of waiting. Yeah, is that in their best interest? Heck yeah. Showing them how to save $36,000, is that in their best interest or mine?
Yeah.
Both, right?
Yeah.
I mean, heck, I want to sell houses, but I also want to sell houses to people that it can really benefit. So instead of this person waiting a year, I'm going to show them what this means. So there's a couple of different layers that we're going to build in here, and I'm going to show you the actual numbers on what just went down in the last week or so you can actually communicate this information. Now, you could take this information and update it every 3, 4, 5, 6 months, so you always know what's going on in the market, and you always have current information to talk about. See, the difference is, instead of talking like a realtor, which is like interest rates went down, I saw 50 of those posts, interest rates went down, here's what that means to you, this is what it's worth over the life of the loan, and is that important to you? What would you do with that extra money if you had that doing the exact same thing? Now you're talking like an expert, right? Instead of a doctor saying, hey, Russ, you got this thing, take this pill. It's like, hey, Russ, you got this thing, here's what it does, here's what it will do if we don't take good care of it. If we take care of it, here's what it'll do, and here's a drug, and here's how you take the drug, and I want to see you in 3 months and make sure that everything's going right. He's not just telling me you got a bump, take a drug. I mean, well, a crappy doctor would. He's like, you got a bump, well, this is what it is, where it is, what it is, how it is, and how we need to take care of it, and here's how important it is to take care of it. And then I want to see you again in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And if it's not, then blah, 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 blah. And he walks me through the scenario so I have an understanding, a higher level of understanding. See, a realtor or a normal person will just say something. An expert will say something and then tie it so it makes sense to you and show you how to apply it to you. So as an expert, real estate expert, I want to say not only interest rates dropped, and let me show you what that means to you and your family. Now we've got a completely different conversation, a completely different scenario. We've got a way better level of engagement, and we've got the ability to look like an expert. And if in this case, we can save them a crap ton of money and help guide their direction in a better path, so long-term they have more money in their pocket and more money for their family. Now, do they like me? Are they going to more likely refer me? Are they going to tell other people about me? Heck yeah, right? Because it's super, super important that we take that next level. So let me show you the scenario with what just went down in the last week or two. Of course, this video, I'll say, for this video's sake, this is, what is it, April? It's the beginning of April 2019, and there's been a big push. Interest rates dropped, and they've been going up a little bit and a little bit and a little bit and a little bit over the last 3, 4, 5 years, 6 years. And what happened is interest rates went from about a 4.25% average in the market for a 30-year fixed mortgage down to a 4. They dropped almost 1/4% over a span of a week. Now, that's where most people stop. Wow, it's dropped almost 1/4% in a little over a week. Whoop-de-doo, right? So here's that next level. So on your average $300,000 house sale, if the mortgage interest rate goes from a 4.25 down to a 4%, the payment on that house, that same exact house, would have been $1,830 at 4.25, and it's $1,788 at a 4% interest rate. So the difference between the two is only $42, which isn't a ton of money. But $42 is still $42, right? If I said to you, Adriana, you got to give me $42 every month, and you get nothing for it, would you be cool with that?
No.
No. Well, who the heck would, right? I mean, $42 represents a decent lunch out with your hubby, right? That's kind of cool. Free lunch every month for doing nothing more than what you're already doing. That's $42. Well, here's the rest of the story, right? Remember, I said we got to tell the rest of the story. So if it just drops 1/4%, that saves you $42 a month, the same exact house. So if you're going out to buy a house, it's $300,000. Would you rather pay $1,788 a month or $1,830 a month?
Yeah.
There's one. Okay. Number two, if you do actually go out and get that house at 4%, it saves you $42 a month. That's two. Number two. Number three, If we take 42 and times that by 360, what is that number? Adriana, do you have a calculator close by or your cell phone close by?
Yeah.
Can you do the math for me on that? $42 times 360 payments. So 30-year fixed mortgage is 360 payments.
15,120.
15,120. Okay. So that's $42 a month or $15,000 more for the same exact house. So if you're thinking about going out and buying a house, if the interest rate goes up just back to that 4.25, which it's been for the last couple of months, if it goes right back up to there, you're going to pay over the life of that loan an additional $15,120 for that same exact house. Yay! No, boo, right? So when you start talking like that, this buyer that's saying to you, hey, I'm thinking about waiting till June, July, August, my response back would be like, okay, totally cool. Is there a specific reason you're doing that? Blah, 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 blah. Great. If I could show you what that means, if interest rates go back up to 4.25, let me show you what that means, and then tell me if you still feel that way. If you still feel that way, heck yeah, I'm going to back you up, right? I don't want to force you into buying a house, but I want to make sure you know this information so that you make a good decision, and then you don't come back and say, hey, Russ, you know, if you had told me that would cost me 15 more grand over the life of loan, which, by the way, remember that fourth layer? $15,000. I could have bought my kid's car for 15 grand. It would have been paid for by itself just by doing that, right? That represents a new 16-year-old kid's used car. I would have bought the stupid house in April. And my response back would be like, well, shame on me. I'm not an expert. I didn't talk like an expert. I should have told you that. Said no real estate agent ever, right? So I'm telling you that. Shame on you as a real estate professional and expert. You should be saying, $300,000 house, this is what that means. It's $42 a month or $15,000. Is that a big deal to you? Yes or no? Great. If you had an extra 15 grand, what would you do with it? I'd buy a car for my 16-year-old. Great. So you can live in the same house and have a car for your 16-year-old for free. Doing the same thing. Now, are we having a different conversation? Now are they looking at me saying, okay, Russ, well, shoot, that is actually a big deal. Yeah. So here's the thing. In the real estate business, we hear people talking about waiting to buy or waiting to sell. It's like, I'm waiting to do, waiting to do, waiting to do. We hear that fairly regularly, right? So when you're talking to a buyer that's waiting to sell, say, I'm going to wait to sell till next year. My first question is, okay, if there was a way you could buy a house today and it made sense, would you do it now instead of waiting a year? And if they say to me, no, there's no way in heck, I can't do blah, 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 fine, no big deal. Can I show you what the math looks like on what's happened over the last year? Because I want you to know, as an expert real estate person, I want to make sure you know what I know. Because if you knew what I knew, you might not think that way. And most of the time, the buyer's like, what? What does that mean? I was like, would you like me to show you what I know? What has gone on over the last year or two while you've not bought a house? And a lot of times they're like, well, yeah, sure, great. So let me show you what's going on in the market, okay? So where were the interest rates, 2-3 years ago?
In the trees.
Yeah, 3%. So this house, I refinanced this house at 3.1%. Pretty sweet deal, right? Like, when was the last? I will probably, it's entirely possible that for the rest of my life, I will never see 3% ever again on a house, because 3% is ridiculously low. And a lot of people don't know that. They just kind of, they get around it and they didn't even realize that's really low. Historically, interest rates are, in the 6s and 7s and 8s. That's not unusual at all in the interest rate business. So we're still, even at a 4.25, we're still substantially below what normal interest rates banks like to get in a good solid economy with a decent amount of growth going on. So at 3%, here's the deal. Let me show you the math on that. At 3%, let me see, I got the numbers written down here, $1,626, okay? So the difference between 4% where it is today and 3%, which is where it was only a couple of years ago, short years ago, the difference is $162. Okay, $162. That's pretty substantial, right? So you remember what I said? Okay, so if you bought your average $300,000 house a couple of years ago with a 3% interest rate, it's now gone up to 4. It's been up in 4.5 and 4.75 in some markets. And I wouldn't be shocked or surprised if it goes up into the 6s or 7s over the next couple of years, because that would be considered normal. So it's kind of coming back to normal. Let me show you what that does on a $300,000 house, just going 1%, which it's done not that long ago, right? Difference between 3% and 4% is $162. And, okay, so the next level, Adriana, what are we doing next? What's 162 times $360? Let's take a sip of water here. Get ready to get sick.
58,320. Oh my.
Did you say oh my?
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
$58,000, right? $58,000. Okay, so guys, listen. Is this important information? Is this like, my mind just blew a little bit? Why aren't we as an industry telling people this? Because most of you guys as real estate agents don't know this. And you're like, well, I'm not a mortgage person. Well, no, but you're a good real estate person, and this isn't like high math here. You could jump on your computer and go into a mortgage calculator, which is all I did, is plugged in a $300,000 house with like $5,000 down at 4% and 3% with average taxes and average insurance numbers, just so I kept it consistent. These are the numbers I came up with. And then I just subtracted the two, and I got 162 bucks. And over the life of that loan, did you guys notice what I've done yet with Adriana twice now? I'm making her type it into her calculator. I would make the buyer pull out their phone, type it in there, and when it pops up, yeah, woo! Right, just like Tam did. She's like, holy crap, right? Wow, $58,000. So, excuse me, allergies are kicking my butt with all the pollen flying. So let me ask you this: is $58,000 a big deal for you for the exact same house?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we got something we're really talking about here, right? 15 grand's a big deal. $58,000 is a freaking mind blower for the same exact house, okay? Wow, amazing, okay? So now let me ask you this. What would you do with $58,000 if you had that doing the exact same thing? So Adriana, do you think you could put a kid through college just on that?
Quite a few things.
Right, you know? I mean, that's a big deal. If I could give you a $58,000 raise over the next 30 years for doing nothing more than what you're already doing, would you be okay with that?
No,
you don't have to work harder. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to mow the lawn more. You don't have to paint it more. Just literally do nothing more than what you're currently doing, and you get $58,000 more over the next 3 years. Would that be pretty cool? 30 years. Would that be cool?
Yep.
That's a couple $1,000, almost $2,000 raise every year for doing nothing.
That's a salary almost.
Yeah, so you're like, wow, that's that, dude. Okay, well now, Russ, that's a completely different conversation, right? So when I see Facebook posts that said interest rates just dropped 0.25%, I go, who gives a crap, right? Well, now let me show you what that means on a $300,000 house. Boom, boom, boom. And now what? Now I've got their attention. Now I stand out. Now I look like not their average real estate person. Now I'm talking like an expert, and people think I'm an expert. I could be a complete nincompoop, and they're still going to think I'm an expert because this is damn good stuff and nobody else is telling this to them. Here's the part that really chaps my ass. The mortgage people aren't telling this story either. Like, who the heck is telling the story in our industry of this, what this means to a buyer and seller? Do you think this changes the way they act? I think it does. Do you think this changes the way they see things? I think it does. Well, let me go to the next step for you guys here too. So if you get more time and somebody really wants to explain it, or you get an engineer, let me take it to the next level. It wouldn't shock nor surprise me at all. Now, I don't have a crystal ball. If I had a crystal ball, I'd be in the Caribbean. I'd be a multi-billionaire in the Caribbean. So if I had a crystal ball, I could just tell you what the lottery numbers are going to be the next 3 or 4 times. Just I'm gone, right? But since I don't have a crystal ball, but I know we're still at historic lows, would you think it would be unusual for the interest rates to go up to 5% over the next year?
They went.
Would not shock nor surprise me. It's been 4.5, 4.75 at various times. So it wouldn't surprise me if it goes into 5. So let me show you the math on that. So from 3% back in the day up to 5%, this gets even more complicated, but the number gets astronomical to the point where you're like, are you sure you want to wait a couple of years? You've already waited a couple of years. Here's what it costs you. If you wait another year, here's what else is going to cost you. 1920. The difference just between 4.25 and 5% is 130 bucks. Right? At 162 is 58. So this is like 40 something, right? Plus or minus. Okay, so let me do the math for you from 3%, which you could have gotten a couple years ago, to 5%, which is probably going to happen in the very near future. The difference between this number and this number is $334 per month. That by itself is a pretty darn big number. So when you get these people saying, I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm saving money to buy a house, I'm going to address that in a second here too. I'll show you how to do that. Watch this, right? Let me run this number for you. $334 a month. What's $334 a month times 360? It's a number, it's a number that's not holy crap.
House.
It's what? It's
another house.
It's my first house. No, it's my second. It's my third house.
120,000. 240. Jeez. Yep.
Okay, so 1/3, a little over 1/3 of the house cost you're paying in addition, just in interest on that same thing. So when people talk about, I'm going to wait, I'm going to wait, I'm going to wait, let me show you what's happened over the last 4 or 5 years. Have you waited the last 3 or 4 or 5 years to do this? Yeah. If you wait another year, here's where we're probably going to be. Run the math. That's about an extra $130,000 in interest. So let me ask you, are you cool paying an extra $130,000 for the exact same thing?
Not at all.
Nope, right? And if you had an extra $120,000 over the next 30 years, would you be cool with that? Yeah, right? So how many kids do you have?
Got 2.
How many kids do you want to put through college for free? When people talk about the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, the reason is because the rich people are seeing this kind of stuff or somebody's advising them on this, right? We can advise rich people or poor people on this because this hurts poor people even more. Because for a rich person, $300 a month isn't a game changer, but for somebody squeaking by, $300 and something a month is a huge deal, right? So can we lift up people that are having a little bit of a struggle? Hell yeah, we can be better people. Make the world a better place. And the people that have a bunch of money are saying, well, shoot, if you got a bunch, you want a bunch more? There's an extra $130,000. I don't know anybody that won't take an extra $130,000 doing nothing. Nothing more than what they're already doing, which is living somewhere, right? This is why we need to encourage home ownership. One of the biggest mistakes the youth are making right now in their 20s, I call it youth. I'm 47, by the way, just for the record. So youth in their 20s, one of the biggest mistakes they're making to financial wealth and freedom is they're not buying a house, which means they're waiting, boom, and in the last 6 or 7 years, this is what's happened to them. And you wonder why home ownership's getting tougher and tougher and tougher and tougher and tougher. So here's a jacked up one, right? You're saying homeowners thinking about buyers thinking about buying, but I'm going to wait a year. My next question to them is, if you could buy a house today and we could figure out a way to make that happen and not put you in a bad spot, would you be willing to buy a house today if we could figure it out? And they may say, yeah, whatever. Why would that be? Why not? Let me ask you, why not? Let them talk through their stuff, right? Let me show you what's happened over the last year. Okay. Now, Tam is in San Jose. So she's like, there are no starter homes. There are no $300,000 homes. They're like, add a 0 to it, So
I was trying.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it'd be like way entry level, right, in the San Jose market. So in Tampa, that's a mid-range house in Tampa, not super high, but mid-range house in Tampa. So let's just use that 300 number just to keep it simple. Okay. So what has happened over the last year in our market, Adriana? Has the market gone up in our market?
Yeah.
How much? Do you know?
3 to 5%, right?
It's actually in a full Tampa Bay market, it's almost 7.
7?
Okay, 7. So that's $21,000 for a $300,000 house. So let me ask you this. Did you save $21,000 in the last year to buy your next house?
Mm-hmm.
And the buyer's like, hell no, I didn't. I was like, who the heck's saving $21,000 for buying their next house? And I go, well, okay, great. So what you're telling me then is if you're not saving that, you're saving up to buy a house. If you're not saving that, the house next year is becoming less and less affordable. You get that, right? You are saving like $500 a month. You save $6,000. House went up 21. I'm not super great at math, but you just lost another $15,000 by saving money. And they go, what? Because nobody's telling them this stuff, right? We as real estate experts should be telling them this information. And then if they decide to do stupid stuff or crackhead stuff or just go, I'm still gonna keep doing what I'm doing, let them. But at least that way I sleep at night knowing I educated these kids, educated these adults, educated these 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds. Here's what's gone on in the last year. Are you sure you want to wait another year? Because that same exact house is going to cost you $15,000 more. At that point, they go, well, okay, that's a game changer. So here's the other thing. So in our market here, so Adriana, you're going to see a lot of $200,000 sales in our market here. Okay, $200,000 house went up $14,000 in the last year. So you look at the kids and say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Kids, are you saving a little over $1,000 a month for your next house? And they go, nope. Then you're making it even less affordable than last year. So let me ask you this. If you could do exactly what you're doing today and have an extra $14,000 in your pocket in the next year, would you take that? Yeah, if the house prices continue to appreciate like they have been in our Tampa market, and we're at a 2.9 month supply of homes in March, which is low, which means it's going to be sub 2-month supply of homes in the summer, which means it's still a seller's market, which means house prices are still going to increase. Even if it flattens out a little bit, it's still going to be an increase in the next year in our market. So my advice to them would be, hey, do you want an extra 14 grand in the next year doing the exact same thing you're doing? So instead of saving $1,000 a month, you're making $14,000 over the next year. If I could give you a $14,000 raise doing nothing more than you're already doing and living somewhere, would you take it?
Yeah.
Whoa, wow. Okay, well, that's a completely different conversation, right? Completely different conversation. So when you start having conversations like that, you start making connections, you start flipping on light bulbs, and you start making sense. And then people go, oh, wow, that's my guy, right? I'm going to use that guy. I might not do it today, but I'm going to use that guy. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have my mortgage person call you, see if we can get you qualified. If we can get you qualified, then let's just decide. It doesn't cost anything to get qualified. Let's see if you do. And then at that point, we can sit down, do the math, and see if it makes sense. If it makes sense, you do it. If it doesn't make sense, no worries. Wait a year. Lose another 14 grand. I'm cool. And then they're like, punch me in the nose. Well, it's like sometimes people really hate it when you make sense. When I'm explaining this to real estate people, sometimes they hate it because they're like, dang it, that makes sense. And I don't, why the heck haven't I been doing it like this? Right? This stuff is priceless. Now, I could stop the video right there. And you guys have good stuff. Don't have to go any further. So if you'd like to stick with me for another 5 or 6 minutes, I want to show you how you combine these two to turn it into a complete train wreck. You ready? Okay, here's how you combine the two. What happened in the last year in our market to a $300,000 house, Adriana? Went up 21 grand, right?
Wow.
What happened in the last year on the interest rates? It went up, let's say it goes up 1% in the next year. How much was that? $58,000. What's $58,000 plus 21? That's $79,000. So in the last year, if the interest rate goes up 1% and properties are appreciating like they have been the last 3, 4, 5 years consistently, even if it was only 5%, it would still be $75,000 you lost because the interest rates are going up currently. 75 grand in 1 year. You lost 3 years college education at a nice school for your kids in 1 year by waiting on buying that $300,000 house. So let me ask you, how many more years would you like to lose another 75,000 bucks? Yeah, and then you're going to hear people, holy squirrel, dang it, right? Because, wow. But this is not telling them, this is showing them. Show them the numbers, show them the math. My recommendation is keep it really simple. Show them 1% interest rate from one point to the next. Because like we're at a 4 right now, it would not be shocking to be at 5. Even if house prices stay flat, you're still losing 58,000 bucks. Dang, right? That's huge. So next layer is if properties appreciate this year like they did last year. Now, bear in mind, I don't have a crystal ball. If I did, I'd be in the Caribbean. I've told you the story already. I'd play the lotto and I'd cheat and I'd probably win the World Series bets and all that stuff. So I'd be in the Caribbean. And if they just stay flat, you get that. If the properties just go up what they did in the last year, 7%, you add another $21,000 to that. That's like taking a $21,000 pay cut over the next 30 years. Are you cool with that? And the answer is almost always hell no. So are you sure you don't want me to have my mortgage guy reach out to you and see if you're qualified to make this happen? If you could do it now, would you, now that you know this? This just, I want to make sure you know the facts. Now that you know the facts, do you understand why it's important? When people say home ownership is important, getting into a home now is important. When I'm saying now is a better time to do it than later, here's why. I'm not telling them, I'm showing them. If I tell them, they do whatever the heck they want. When I show them, I'm telling you, you can't unsee this. You cannot unsee this. It'll stick in their head for the rest of their life. So now, some of you might be saying, hey, Russ, well, what if the market's going down? Okay, great. Here's your script for if the market's going down. You're like, well, this only works if the market's going up, right? No. If interest rates are flat or interest rates are doing nothing, no big deal. That's just neutral, right? If the home prices are going down and interest rates are going up, you got even more issues. But if home prices are going down, here's a scenario with home prices going down. Let me run some math for you. Ready? Have you seen home prices ever go down, Adriana?
No.
Yeah, I have. Welcome to 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in Tampa, right? 5 years straight of things just rocketing down. It started flattening out around 10, 11, and then started moving back up in 12, 13, 14, 15, up to 19, right? So in a market that's declining, Tam, is your market declining in San Jose?
It's just softening.
It's softening a little bit?
Soften, right.
Got
But
it.
it's not going down.
Okay, good. So the cool part is it was at such low numbers for so long, everybody started freaking out. Like, the sky is falling. We're going to have a bubble. Well, you can't have a bubble like in Tampa. They're like, it's going to bubble. I'm like, you can't bubble at a 2.9 month supply of homes in January and February. There's not enough homes supply to meet demand. You can't have a bubble because you don't have enough supply for the current demand. Sales actually were up, even though demand was down. So what's happening in Tampa is that, you know, property prices are going to probably going to go up, but even if they don't, they stayed flat. You know, that would be what I'd expect in the Tampa market right now. But there are some markets, particularly the California markets, that really did a big jump fast the last 3, 4, 5 years. They're starting to flatten out and people are freaking out. It's like, it's okay if it goes back to a normal supply of 5 and 6 month supply of homes. I like it when the market's 5 and 6 month supply of homes. Sellers can take time to make a good decision. Buyers can look at more than one house without freaking out and having to write an offer on the front of the car and competing with 10 other offers in 2 days. So I like it when people can make good decisions and aren't super rushed. So for me, I like 5 and 6 month supply of homes. So for us, as it goes up, I keep saying it's going up. That's good. I'd love to see it at 8 and 9 in January, February, like it's supposed to be. So in the selling season, if it's 5 and 6, I think that's great. So you got to just watch that market supply and know what that means. I want a good balanced market. I should be in 5 or 6 month supply of homes. So if it's coming back to that, that's good. That's great news. And as long as it stabilizes there, we're fine. Hey, if it keeps going up, then, you know, hey, you're going to have potential for properties to decline. So if you get into a position, Tam, where properties are declining and somebody's thinking about selling, seller's like, well, I'm thinking about selling. Okay, well, you got a $300,000 house right now. And over the last year, the market has declined by 5%. That means your $300,000 house just went down $15K in the last year. So let me ask you, if everything stays the same, bear in mind I don't have a crystal ball, because if I did, I'd be in the Caribbean. We told that story. $15,000 is what you lost in the last year. Let me ask you this. How many more years are you cool with losing 15 grand? 1, 2, 3? And then they go, what? Yeah, so like 100% of the commission that we're paying on this thing, you're basically, it would be exactly the same thing as if you wait next year. It's like paying double the commission. You don't even want to pay me the first commission, much less paying it twice, right? So in that case, do you think it would be better for you to sell now and just go out and rent something versus waiting another year and potentially losing another 15 grand? So as you go through this conversation, you can use these same numbers in reverse and start showing them what it looks like if market's going down. Here's what happens with your price. So when I was sitting with sellers, the sellers were like, well, we don't know if we're going to sell or not yet. You know, the market's been getting hit and blah, blah, blah. And we just don't know if we're ready to go or not yet. I said, well, let me show you what happened over the last 2 years. Over the last 2 years, you've just lost $35,000, $40,000 on your house. Are you cool with losing more? No. So are you really sure you want to wait another 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 months? Because you're almost guaranteeing it because the supply is going up and continuing to go up, which means prices are going to continue to go down. If it was stable, it wouldn't be as big of a deal. And I'd tell them that. If it's stable, no worries. Don't worry. The market's pretty stable. It's pretty balanced. It seems like it's staying. It's sticking. But if the markets continue to go down and the inventory is going up and the supply is going up, which means demand is down, supply is up, then you really need to seriously think about making that thing move now, or you're losing even more money. We had plenty of people that waited 2 and 3 and 4 years, and then we wait 4 years, they blew through 100% of their equity, and now they have to bring money to the closing to get rid of their house. We're telling them, okay, if you sell it for this, you got to bring $20,000 to the closing table. They're like, Russ, I don't have it. Well, yeah, you do. You just don't want to give it to us. Well, you're not giving it to me. You don't want to throw it away. You don't want to pay for the right to throw away your house. So if you have to go, do what you got to do. But if you don't have to go at this point, I'd say just stay put. Just going to ride this thing out. Over the next 5 or 6 or 7 years, the market should come back and you'll be able to sell it for what you paid for it. I know, I'm in the same boat. I bought this house. We lost a crap ton of money on it. It took almost 10 years to get back to what I consider reasonably close to even. 10. So if you're cool being there for the next 10 years, no big deal. Don't worry about it. But if you're not and you're saying, no, I can't be here for the next 10 years, well, then you better do it now. So that conversation helps them think through that process. Now, do you sound more like an expert? Use facts, use what's happened in the last year, use what happened in the last year with interest rates, and have a better conversation. Does that sound good? Pretty cool, huh?
Mm-hmm.